you look at entrepreneurship and innovation at the university, we are particularly proud of having the Zembrook Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation, and also looking at the new academic programs, certainly that our College of Business is putting on to help further advance the innovation that's taking place at the university. But innovation is just not the new academic building and certainly the center, but it's also the work that we're doing to make sure that we continue to be mission driven, that we continue to be focused on the success of our students, and certainly the excellence of Thomas More University. This evening's event is exciting as we'll have the opportunity to hear from one of the nation's best and brightest as he advances his knowledge and certainly new knowledge in the fight against cancer. It's been an honor to have Dr. Doug Flora, and certainly this has been long overdue to have Dr. Flora here join us in talking about the work that he's doing to transform the work of fighting against cancer here in Northern Kentucky. And I want to certainly thank Dr. Flora for all the work that he has done and certainly his unwavering commitment to our communities and certainly our loved ones. So Doug, thank you very much for the work that you're doing. It is hard to believe it's been a year and a half since the last evening of innovation, and we are thrilled to see how this wonderful event has returned and gives us another opportunity to show our gratitude to all of you who have supported the university. The evening of innovation also provides opportunities to learn more about the ways in which Thomas More partners with our partners in the area of Northern Kentucky, from our friends as well. And it also gives us an opportunity to highlight the work and the partnership that we have with St. Elizabeth Healthcare. This evening, we're reminded of that strong partnership between our two mission-driven Catholic institutions that are committed to Northern Kentucky and the greater Cincinnati region. Earlier this academic year, back in September, we officially unveiled Thomas More's first named college, the St. Elizabeth College of Natural and Health Sciences, in recognition of this outstanding partnership. Through this partnership, we've also created innovative programs and opportunities and scholarships and financial aid for our nursing students, as we look to expand also our degree offerings in public health. St. Elizabeth works to help make a high-quality Catholic liberal arts education at Thomas More University a reality for many of our students, while also giving them the experience and opportunity for a promising career at one of the best medical facilities in the country. At Thomas More, we're grateful for this partnership, and certainly we look forward to the continued working of our two great organizations. It is my distinct pleasure to introduce Bob Sathey, who will introduce Dr. Flora in a moment, but I want to give Doctor, here we go, we just gave him a promotion now. We're going to make Dr. Sathey now the person who will come up and do that introduction. But first, I want to thank Bob and certainly Deland for all the work that they have done here at Thomas More University, plus the work that they've done at St. Elizabeth Healthcare and throughout Northern Kentucky and the greater Cincinnati region. They have been great stewards and hallmarks of our community. And certainly the work that Bob has done in helping us transform Thomas More University over the past 3 years in working with our capital campaign has been extraordinary. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce Dr. Bob Sathey.
Actually, that wasn't too far off, because every time Doug's got a hairy problem he can't deal with, he calls me. That's my opinion on what I might do with it. This is great to be here. It's great to see all these faces. I've worked on so many campaigns at Thomas More University over the years, and I know almost all of you. A few of you maybe I haven't met, but it's great to be a part of Thomas More University and what we're doing at St. Elizabeth's. The collaborative is just incredible. It is a dynamic that's undeniable, and it's something that's going to prove to even be more fruitful in the future. I want to talk just a little bit about a couple things that are going on at Thomas More, and then I'll get on to my good friend Dr. Flora. When Joe Chillo came here, I guess it's 4 years ago, Joe? Seems like yesterday. I had been somewhat divorced from the university. I've been involved over the years in doing a lot of different things. And I was struck by his passion and by his commitment to put in a system of measurable events that we could look at ourselves and compare ourselves to other universities and colleges of the same size. And he didn't pick the small ones, he picked the ones that had the highest numbers. We're on track to do all of that. He didn't say this, but our goal was to raise $30 million in a capital campaign. We're sitting, I think, Kev, right at 33 million and change, 34 million. The highest bidder, 34. and that is going up. Exciting stuff that Dr. Rosenthal is doing over at the business school. If you haven't met Dr. Rosenthal, he's the dean of our business, and he's doing unbelievable things. So I'm excited to be a part of Thomas More again. I'm engaged, and it is neat to see the collaboration we have with St. E's. Now, my friend, Dr. Flora.
That's all the time we have.
So Bishop Hughes once said, there are 5 B's of public speaking. Be brief, Bob, be brief. So I'll try to honor Bishop Hughes. I met Doug, it's probably 4, 5, 6 years ago. And about 12 years ago, my wife was diagnosed with breast cancer. And I would have told people, people get cured all the time. This is no big deal. It's a big deal when it's you and it's your family. And so we've experienced, and the outcome has been very favorable. We've experienced firsthand what it means to have a diagnosis, and I know many of you have as well, with loved ones and others. But to have someone involved in a program that not only has the intellect to run it, but the passion and the care for the patients. There's nobody like Doug Flora, and I'll tell you a story. What's the old saying? I don't care how much you know until I know how much you care. One of my best friends' father died of pancreatic cancer. His mother died of pancreatic cancer, and his younger brother died of pancreatic cancer. And he called me and said, "What should I do?" I said, "I don't know, but I know someone who does know," and my friend lives in Bismarck, North Dakota, so it's not convenient for him to be here. And I called Doug and I said, "Doug, should we bring him in?" He said, No, I'll work with him. He must have spent 3 or 4 hours with my friend over the phone, counseling him on what the next step should be, and got him to, was it the University of Minnesota, Doug? I can't remember where you sent him. And he spent untold amount of hours with him. There was nothing in it for Doug other than it was the right thing to do. So when I think of Doug and what he's doing here, he's really pretty special technically, but he's even more special as a person. Now, there's only one part of Doug Flora that I haven't been able to figure out. He cannot tie a bow tie. Okay, he wears them all the time. I bought him, I think you said 2, I think I bought you 3, and I even bought him a learner's instruction on how to tie a bow tie. He still can't do it. So, Doug, I'm going to turn it over to you. I was pretty gentle. I could have been, hey, and eat your heart out, okay?
Yes. Well, thank you, Bob, for those kind words. And I'm about 50-50 for the days that I tie him, but I'll let him have that. I got up at 5 today. There was no chance. Usually when I have these events, and I'm glad to have you all here, I try and relax myself and imagine everyone naked. And then I saw Bob, and I decided not to do that. I'm sure you all understand, especially Delianne. Well, we're glad to have you guys here, and it is Tri-3, so we're so glad to have people here. I love this place. This is home to me, and home to many of you. Whether you've been patients here, and we love you, and you know that, or donors, or interested community leaders who've been a part of bringing this together, because this was not always like this. When I got here, Garen brought us in from private practice, and we were nervous. I didn't want to be an employee. I owned my own practice, and then I got here and I realized that they were good, and I mean like capital G good. And I remember texting my wife for a few months after I got here, because I was used to Game of Thrones in private practice, where it was all about quarterly bonuses and volumes. And Garen has consistently just said, do the right thing. And I think those of you who are in business understand that if you provide a quality product, and I mean that in the most gentle way, it wins commercially as well. So we've done very well for the hospital, but I'm proud of the things that we've been able to bring to Northern Kentucky, because it's home. And I think you guys get that, most of you who know me, and I know many of the people in the room. So because of our partnership with Thomas More and many of you, I wanted to do a little bit of talk about what we've built, what we're building in terms of the innovations that we're bringing to this region, both in terms of the technical stuff and the talent, because the Northern Kentucky wins as we attract better talent. As you all know, that's a big thing in medicine and in business. And then the second half, I may get into some interesting things that I hope your programs can help us develop. We, like everyone else in the world, has a staff crisis right now, and you guys can help train the next generation of Dougs and others. and a little bit more about things that I'm getting into that I think are going to help our cancer patients in years coming, and especially with the advent of AI and updates that we're going to have there. So it'll be fun. We'll keep it light. If you have any questions, keep them to yourself. I don't care what you think. I don't want to hear it. Sathi, keep your mouth shut. Dr. Sathi, I just about gagged. All right, so here we are. So we started about 2016 in earnest, strategically trying to identify how we could become a destination center. And by that, I mean a place that you would never dream of leaving for your care. Many of you have sought care here, and you know the difference lately. But in 2016, there were problems with reputation. I think the old joke for folks around here many years ago, pre-Garin, where if you got sick, you went across the river. And that is definitely not happening. And we've seen that entire tide shift in the last 3 years for sure. And it was intentional. The things that I have on here, we don't need to get into the tactics, and everything has 9 sub-points and pillars. But I wanted to focus on a couple of things. The team-based ecosystem is real here, and it's multidisciplinary care. It is 3 doctors in one room with 1 patient at the same time. It's a nurse navigator that is the glue that you inherit the moment you're diagnosed, long before a doctor even knows you have cancer. And that person, right now it's all she, travels with you through your entire journey from diagnosis through bereavement or survivorship. And they're on speed dial. They have your cell phone, you have theirs. They'll meet you here for coffee. They will deliver your CT contrast to you so that you don't have to get out of your car in the parking garage. And they become dear, trusted friends that are in the business. And so the things that used to happen where doctors would have to call doctors and get things worked out, the nurses, they handle all of that. And they're senior, and they're beloved here. It also lets us hire a different caliber of doctors when I can attract them and say, I want you to just do nothing but pancreas cancer. I want you to do nothing but colon cancer. On Monday, we bring our first ever bone marrow transplanter to Northern Kentucky. We've never been able to attract that kind of talent before, right? That would have been handy 30 years ago. Yeah, you don't have to go to Boston anymore for that. From our perspectives, each different luminary that we brought in, and I'll show you some of them, were attracted because of the physical plant, and also I think because of the vision that they get to really, really take care of patients, and that's what they do best, and we're supposed to take care of the rest for them. And so it's been a really fun thing for me to watch that develop. The contemporary care I'm going to get into in detail, and I hope many of you guys know the contributions of the Zembrotes in the back to help us build research from the ground up, and very, very generous donations, not just to research, but precision medicine. And Jerry will not let me put up a Zembrote gargoyle in the front of the building, but she's made me promise never to tell anyone she's given any gifts, but I just blew that. Sorry, Jerry. So this is what's happened in the last couple of years when we brought in our original consultants to help me craft the game plan, our playbook. This was an aggressive growth trajectory that we predicted by 2027 we would have 3,045 patients. When we took over, we were at 2,000. That's kind of a medium-sized community cancer center, and we wanted to get to play with the big boys. And so our growth curves, you can see here, the dark blue and the red line were predicted with a very aggressive growth strategy. If we put the $150 million in this building, they will come. And you can see by 2022, we were well above. And we're tracking to pass that 2027-year aggressive trajectory this year. And I don't know if we'll get quite to 3045, but we might be 3043. We'll see. I'm trying to get every last person to come because that's my goal. I can leave then. When we hit 3045, I'm done. I'm going to retire. My wife wants me to play pickleball. I mentioned the talent. These people are genuinely decent human beings, and they're very, very good doctors. We've hired 32 providers to Northern Kentucky to fight cancer in the last 32 months. And it's been a constant stream of MD Anderson, Dana-Farber Cancer Center, Moffitt Cancer Center. Those are the top 3. Roswell Park Cancer Center, Fox Chase, UCLA. We did have one Michigan guy, which I couldn't keep out because I'm a Buckeye, but he's reasonably nice. I don't know if he's that bright because he went to Michigan. But how many Michigan guys we got here? Sorry. Yeah, nobody's throwing anything, so go Bucks. Yeah, you won't even remember this talk, sir. And each of these has a specialty. So each one of these people, Dr. Islas joins us Monday. He's the malignant hematologist who will specialize in lymphomas and leukemias and myelomas that we've traditionally shipped across the river. Dr. Riaz is a lung cancer and head and neck cancer expert who left as the faculty member who was in charge of all the fellows at UC to come over here to practice medicine. Dr. Currian is a chief fellow at Case Western who had 32 offers and took ours, including over all of my competitors across the river, and they were pissed. It was so good. And so on. Dr. Shaw from Moffitt Cancer Center, Moscow from Stanford, and so on. And they would not have come if we hadn't had this place growing. And part of that is intentional. Partners like Thomas More, partners like Kroger Health, partners like the Association of Community Cancer Centers, and many, many others, we realized early on that this was a team sport and that we had to be conveners. We don't have the budget as a not-for-profit to do everything that I wish we could do or buy everything I wish we could have. But with these ambitious partnerships that we've been developing over the last 3 to 4 years, it's turned into a reality that we have things that we couldn't have imagined before. So we're NCI members with the Marquis Cancer Center. We have national reputations with the Association of Community Cancer Center that I get to take over. It's 40,000 doctors in 2 years. We're going to have St. Elizabeth on the map, and that person who runs it right now is in the White House on Tuesday. I'm super pumped about that. I don't know who'll be in the White House, but I'm not going to be quiet. Surprise.
Yeah, right.
This national brand is starting to reap benefits in recruiting. So those doctors were attracted to us. They called me for jobs. I didn't recruit them. All those people that I just showed you weren't people that we had to track down. They sought me out, asking if they could be a part of this because of the things that you see on this slide. And they're starting to take note that this is one of the top community academic hybrids in the country. And we're moving to that next phase of being a real academic medical center without having to have that university affiliation, because I think we can do it as well or better and maybe a little bit more nimble than the rest of them because we can act fast. And that's the innovation part of the talk I want to get into. Some of the things that we've done that seemed outlandish when you guys first met me 3 or 4 years ago, we've executed on those promises, and they're cool. This is just a great example. Dr. Gieske now is running what we think is the #1 or #2 lung cancer screening program in the country. He was invited to present this in Vienna, Austria. We've presented in Toronto. I've had meetings in the last 2 or 3 months with MD Anderson Cancer Center and Ohio State at the James, where I trained, and they're stunned. Ohio State is 6 times our size, and they did 2,100 cancer screenings last year for lung cancer. We did 8,600 or 8,400, and they don't understand how this works because it's a team sport. And with the work of St. Elizabeth physicians and the work of the providers, everybody's aligned with the same purpose, and that's to go upstream to fight cancers. And I'll talk a little bit about that as I move on. Still a major problem. We're still worst in the country for lung cancer, worst in the country for colon cancer, top 5 for most cancers, worst mortality in the country for cancer, and that's not the top of the list that we want to be on. It's driven by smoking. We're still #2 in the country for tobacco. We've got lots of radon down in the southern areas of Kentucky as well, and lots of other stuff. We've got obesity, we've got poor health literacy, we've got a lot of people like to drink more than I do, not much, but some, and that's a risk factor. And then people who don't seek screening, and so we're working on that with great intent. This is our adage here. This is Bishop Desmond Tutu talking about we must stop pulling people out of the river. We need to go upstream and find out why they're falling in. And when I met Bob, this is the stuff that I started to talk about. When I met the Zeks and when I met the Zembrots, I think Tony and Jerry were the first people I talked to about attacking cancer differently. And I'm tired of pulling bodies out of the river. And I don't mean that to be overly graphic, but we're losing 1,700 people today to cancer. And I can make certain that half of them don't die of cancer if they get appropriately screened. I could save 42% of those remaining if we could change the way we eat and drink and exercise. And so it's a passion project, Doug 2.0. I've been a cancer doctor for 20 years. I've given the worst drugs in the world to people, and I don't like doing that. And so our innovations we're moving upstream. And so we've spent a ton of our time and effort and resources to try and go upstream to try and find these cancers before they're cancers. I'll talk a little bit about that. These are the lung cancer screening numbers. So the national average for lung cancer screening is about 5% or 4.8% in the last report. That means that 96% of people who are diagnosed with lung cancer aren't getting the appropriate screening for their disease state. Imagine if we had those numbers in pink ribbon girls and breast cancer, right? If 4 or 5 women out of 100 were screened, we'd be having revolts. But somehow, because there's this stigma that's associated with lung cancer, it's like they did it to themselves, and they really didn't. You know, more people with lung cancer are former smokers than current smokers. More women who are medium smokers or never smokers are getting cancer than current men smokers. And so we have to get rid of that stigma. This is our program. You can see the growth. We had 7 cases in 2013, and we're up to 8,200 this year and going up every year. And I can tell you, it's been probably the single most rewarding thing in my experience. I've given chemotherapy to women for breast cancer for 15 years to save 3 people out of 100 with 6 doses of horrors. We found our 500th cancer this week, And 79% of those are savable, completely curable. 92% or above are cured because they're stage 1 or 2. We find a cancer every 31 scans now, and that person is very likely to be saved. So this is my life's mission here, and I love this curve, and it's going to go straight up. We're not done yet. These are some of the numbers here. We had 23 consecutive cancers found in stage 1 last year. We started this year with 9, and we found a stage 3, and it was our first scan. So we let those happen sometimes. We don't have any more stage 2, 3, or 4 in our second scan, third scan, because we're doing it yearly. We had 808 in 1 month, and it says top 4%. We're top 2% now according to the American College of Radiology, and I think given our recent growth, we may be crossing Leahy, who invented the test and has 1,400 doctors to my 400. This is another sign of innovation. You guys have heard me if you've opened a newspaper or seen anything that Judy Klebs has printed in Northern Kentucky Tribune. We really call it whole person care with a capital W, and it means that you get valet parking. A greeter will be standing right here to warmly walk you the 6 feet over there to make sure you're not lost. People Bob's age often need assistance to get from there to there. Central lab, central pharmacy, and everything is expedited by a tracking system, and it's like tagging sharks or something. We can watch this like air traffic control, so there are no waiting rooms. You don't sit and wait unless you're seeing me, because I'm the slow doctor in the building. Integrative oncology is part of that whole person care, and so we felt like this was the surround sound that the patients were lacking when it's all about CAT scans and chemotherapies. So yeah, and you'll see on tours, if you stick around or wish us to walk you around, there's a yoga studio, there's a mind-body studio for people to work on their spiritual and mental health and physical health, cancer prehab and rehab. There's a demonstration teaching kitchen that you guys were all eating in a few minutes ago, where we put on lessons from local celebrity chefs and local professional chefs to teach people that food is medicine, and the decisions we make for what we put in our mouth does affect your chance of recurrence for an estrogen receptor positive breast cancer or a colon cancer or many others. There's poor health literacy, so we're trying to work upstream to teach people that you can eat differently. We have wigs in a giant boutique so people can be fitted with prosthetic breasts in a very sensitive, private fashion with chick. Tons and tons of volunteers in here. Yoga studios lead to Reiki and Tai Chi and things like that. And then our acupuncture and massage has just been overwhelmed with business. And I don't profess to understand how it works, but I know about 600 people have had acupuncture here and told us it helped. We're going to keep doing it under medical doctor supervision. We're bridging innovation now. You hear how much I care about the scans that people have, the CT scans. It's a 1-minute single breath hold. It's covered by insurance. It takes about 30 seconds, but it identifies shadows on a CAT scan. And by the time the cancer is the size of a sugar cube, it's 10 with 9 0 cells behind it. And that's probably too late for some biologies. And so we're moving now. We've got a test called GRAIL. And GRAIL is a multi-cancer early detection test that happens on the first floor here for people who are worried. People who have genetic mishaps, who have a cancer gene like me, people who had mom and sister and aunt who had breast cancer who are worried. Not only do we do the genetic testing to see if you have a family worry that you've inherited a bad gene, but now you can detect 50 different cancers with a simple blood draw, including things like pancreas cancer and ovarian cancer, which typically were not screenable. And that's a huge, huge gain for us. We're opening some clinical trials with this as well. It is available commercially. They're sponsoring a week on the PGA Tour about a month ago, so GRAIL is here, and we're doing it through our genetics and precision medicine department that is named after Jerry Zembro. No. So we're doing it through our genetics. We're doing it cautiously. We're doing it carefully. It is not a perfect test. We have to do 200 to find one person who has a cancer in their blood by circulating tumor cells or what we call chromosome arms. And we find one who it says has cancer who doesn't. And that's the one we're trying to figure out, because that's terrifying. Obviously, if you have a false positive, we want to regulate that and make sure you have a genetic counselor attached to you. The room behind the bar, for those of you that were looking up and not down at the beers, we just finished shelving, and I'm super excited about this one. This is an innovation that started with one of our administrative assistants upstairs on the 5th floor, and she recognized that there was a need, that patients with cancer had food insecurity, and it's anywhere between 17 and 55% of patients receiving care for cancer don't have food security. They don't know if they can afford meals and meds. And so that started as an internal thing. Our integrative oncology team took over, and now we built, in a matter of 3 months, a food pantry. And we're partnering with Free Store Food Bank Dwynelva Zachary, who's our integrative oncology director, is on their board. One of the benefits of being a board member is you can do nimble things like that. And we're going to pack that thing with food for our cancer patients. We're starting a healing garden out back where we're growing all the fresh produce and planters for all of them. So you're going to come for your chemo, you're leaving with groceries. And that's available to staff as well. As you can imagine, some of our staff don't have enough to get by either if they're single moms of 3 and they're medical assistants. We're going to feed our own. And I love that we're growing and it feels perfect. And that's the sort of innovation that Garam would love because it's about the community. It's again, that whole floor is non-revenue generating. It's a huge money loser for us and we love it. That's not for profit. Well, it's good that we've got Chuck here. I met you guys probably 4 or 5 years ago, and this has been a really, really cool partnership, not only from an investment standpoint that St. E's is helping to fuel the successes that Chuck's team and Bexion are having, but we're now opening patients on clinical trial. I screened one for it today, and I hope she gets in. I think she should. It's a metastatic colorectal trial using standard of care drugs and the Bexion drug that may allow us to give more chemotherapy without causing horrible disabling neuropathy. And it may impact their cancers significantly. We wouldn't have that without partnerships, which is really what I think our community is about. All of you guys understand the importance of community, and we're proud of it. It's a phase 1 clinical trial. Typically, community centers don't do that. Phase 1 trials are hard. Those patients are going to be here for 8 hours, 5 consecutive days, and nurses are going to be standing next to them with clipboards and stopwatches as we draw blood on the hour. You can't have that sort of infrastructure without all of this. You can't have it without researchers like Dan Flora, who's the principal investigator here for that trial, and the GI leader that we recruited from Stony Brook, who will help us enroll everybody that we can, because all he's seeing is colon cancer and he believes in the trial. Another innovation, I mentioned the Worried Well. I used to be one of them, and then I got my own cancer, so I guess I'm on the other team. But we have a cancer prevention clinic. So we have a cancer geneticist here from City of Hope and Cleveland Clinic. She sees patients 1 or 2 days a week who have worries. They may send the Grail test, they may do a whole body MRI, they may do CT scans or ultrasounds. They may just counsel you in terms of diet and exercise and nutrition, but there's a place for those patients that are worried, and that's been overwhelmingly successful. It's about 6 months in, and we've had to add another clinic day this week. And we're proud of that because nobody else does that. That's a whole clinic dedicated to people who are healthy. That's very unheard of in cancer center. We're trying to put ourselves out of business. So where do we go from here, right? This is 2022, 2023. That's lots of heady growth, and I'm excited that the patients are responding and the market shares are growing and all the things that the bean counters care about are going well. But one of my jobs here as the clinician leader is to be thinking 3 to 5 years ahead of time, because I don't think that 5 years from now, we want to have our crown jewel looking for shadows on CAT scans, because that blood test might replace that. It's like being the best at Blockbuster, right? Being the best at VHS tapes doesn't work as a business model. And so we're really looking for solutions to things like that, and we're thinking very strategically about how we want to take this center to the next level. And so some of this is workforce. Many of you guys understand there are no people to hire. We've put $16 million of funding into nursing. We still have hundreds and hundreds of nursing spots available that we can't fill because people are either doing travel nursing in Orlando, where it's beautiful, or they've retired, or many of them have gone on to get masters in nursing. And I think we're graduating 500 nurses with masters, nurse practitioners a semester right now. And they've left the floors and they've left the chemo suites, and they're doing bigger, better things, I hope, for them in terms of patient care, expanding access, but we've been left with a dearth of nurses. And we're gonna have to figure that thing out. I've joked about Bob's age a couple of times, but the serious thing is that we are graying. The whole community is aging each year, and Kentucky's right in the middle of it. 30% of people are over 65 in 2030. And we're not set up for that. As you know, that's a complicated group of patients, often on 15 or 16 medicines, 3 or 4 competing medical diseases, and it's really, really hard to do that right, and it's very, very expensive to do it well. And so we're gonna have to worry about this and get away from this episodic care to preventing things and moving upstream to try and make sure that you don't have complications of diabetes or hypertension or cancer or stroke or heart disease by affecting the way we eat and drink and other. Some cool stuff that I will just as a sidebar mention. We had Kroger Health CMO in here about 2 weeks ago with his team, and we're looking to do research with them. They're going to gamify our carts. They already do if you're online. If you're using ClickList, you're going to get a score of 0 to 1,000 for how well you chose your foods. And instead of looking in the back for saturated fats and sodium and whatever, they're going to give you red, yellow, green. And the food pyramid now is 60% green, 20% yellow. And they're hoping to form partnerships with healthcare systems to report what you're buying to me. The fifth vital sign might be donuts. And so for us, I think it's great because they've now published a study out of University of Cincinnati with Dylan Steen as a principal investigator, where they intervened based upon those scores, and they gave people a free telehealth visit with a dietitian, and they changed blood pressures, they changed cholesterols, they changed heart disease by intervening with a dietitian. I think that's fascinating. So more to come with that. We may have some announcements about that. We're not quite there yet, but I love those creative partnerships. Talking about our staffing crisis, goodness, I mean, it's an all-day, everyday deal. We have medical assistants that we train, we hire, they go to lunch, and they don't come back. It's like fast food sometimes. So the workforce is very transitory. They can go 2 buildings down and make $6 more an hour. They can move to Amazon and make $8 more an hour than we can afford to pay. Even though we know what the market is, we can't do it and stay afloat. And so we're gonna have to get clever. We're gonna have to get creative. We're gonna have to work with partners like Thomas More, work with partners like NKU to make more of these healthcare workers. If you have any kids, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, talk to them about their career choices, send them to healthcare because they will have 100% job security. Just look at this and it makes me sick to my stomach. I think what's gonna happen is we all age and the number of patients goes up. This is how we think we're gonna fix a lot of this. I'm sure many of you have heard about artificial intelligence. It's all over the USA Today and the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times, but I will tell you, it's here. It arrived November 30th with this chatbot GPT-3, and it's changed the universe for most of us that are working in this world. So for our sake, it's now able to iterate. It's able to think like we think, not like a computer. I've had conversations with my AI software upstairs where I've said, I need a letter of recommendation for this young woman who wants a fellowship in genetic counseling. And I've cut and pasted her CV in. 30 seconds later, I have a beautiful letter that I couldn't have written in 2 hours. And I can say to the computer, I don't like this girl that much. Make it slightly less enthusiastic. It rewrites the letter. It's not an exaggeration. If you haven't played with this thing, it's openai.com, and you get on there, it will plan Christmas dinner for 20, and it will put the list in order of Kroger aisles or Walmart aisles or Target aisles. It's quite ridiculous. I tried when it was brand new. It came out in November. I've been playing with it for hours. I had it write a Shakespearean sonnet about Homer Simpson eating a donut at Wrigley Field. It was perfect, and it's instant. It just. So we're going to use some of these AI solutions to help medicine as well. It may hopefully capture my notes so I don't spend 6 hours a clinic day typing for Epic. Well, we've just vetted a product that will be reading mammograms, over-reading the mammographer, to give artificial intelligence the ability to use pattern recognition, which is what it does best right now. It can read any pattern better than the human eye. And so we're looking at a program called Mammo AI to back up our mammographers, to say, we want you to see these breasts in 3D, and we want you to see the tiniest little hypercalcification that appeared 3 years ago that the human eye wouldn't recognize got whiter. It didn't even get bigger. And so that'll be a big move for our radiologists. We have IQ that we're vetting. It's playing Tetris with chemo chairs to eliminate 18-minute waits here and 24-minute waits here by letting AI sort what our techs and our front desk people do now. It's great because it gets patients hours back, but it also saves me the $2 million of expanding my chemo suite because we're overwhelmed right now. So it's a good capital thing to invest in these programs so that I can work more efficiently without having to build new things or hire new staff. It's everywhere. It is breast cancer. It's gestational age for women who are pregnant. Looking at lymph node metastases in breast cancer women. It's reading CT scans right now across the country at Stanford and Northwestern for lung cancer screening. It's pretty much now, if you are a pattern doctor, a radiologist, a pathologist, or somebody who looks at the back of eyes for a living, you need to pick another career because in 3 years, the computers are going to be doing all of this with a higher sensitivity and accuracy than your own doctors, and it's validated. That chatbot I talked about just passed all the medical boards and the bar instantaneously. And the next version of that comes out in a month, and it has access to everything that's on the internet. The GPT-3 that we're using right now was trained up to 2021, and they stopped scanning documents. The next one has everything that has ever been learned. And I've talked to you guys before about this, many of you, the amount of medical science doubles every 73 days now. This is gonna double in hours. And so companies like Chuck's will be able to use AI to take these folded protein structures and manipulate them 60,000 different directions per minute, looking for a hole to poke in and grab a receptor, looking for a target The bench work that they've spent 9 years on, starting way back when, it's taking 24 hours now. And identifying these two compounds need to leave the bench and go into clinical trials. It's remarkable. And I warn you in a happy way, it's gonna save so many lives. It's gonna solve a lot of our problems. We just have to be really careful about how we do it. Here's a great example from bakeries to hospitals. This is Trish's favorite slide. Trish Bowe makes these slides and they're beautiful. I have no such skills. This is Bakery Scan. This is a pattern recognition software that was able to identify different forms of croissants and donuts and breads and things. And to the hematologist, it's crazy because I have blood cells that look just like that. Those curled croissants, those are sickle cells and sickle cell anemia. That's an elliptocyte, that's an ovoallocyte. And they recognize that this pattern recognition for understanding which bread was there would identify things in the blood as well. And there's really no difference. It just knows pixels. It doesn't care what it's made out of, if it's yeast or hemoglobin. It's being used right now to identify cancer cells in pixels. So it will take 1 million different pixels of a biopsy where your doctor's supposed to find this needle in a haystack on a microscope for their 30th slide they're looking at that day and identify something that's so infinitesimal that most of us wouldn't catch it. It performed better than pathologists. It found cancers that pathologists didn't see, and these were people that specialized only in prostate cancer biopsies, and the computers are already better, and the computers are teaching themselves at a rate that we can't understand because they train themselves now. So every day my language, my dictating software gets better because it learned the day before. Just like Cortana or Siri can finish your sentences when you're typing or a Google search, this stuff is now identifying cancers in their earliest faintest footsteps long before the human eye would recognize them. And it's already here. These are programs that are out. They're commercially available. These are some of the companies. We're working with some of them. I bought Eon about 2 years ago for our lung cancer screening program, and it's identifying nodules that we wouldn't have seen with the human eye. Part of the thing that I'm so proud about for this lung cancer screening program is not only are there volumes, but they're doing incredibly good quality work. And we're not seeing downstream harm to patients because we're identifying the right nodules and not diagnosing things that don't need to be chased. And the computers are helping us. I talked about lean toss. Epic is doing some of these things to help us use as a business intelligence tool so that we can identify the 13 discharges today who have a high risk of getting readmitted and the 287 patients who aren't, so that we send nurses out to visit the 13 people we're worried about so they don't end up bouncing back to the ER and giving us costly Medicare penalties and hurting that family. This is pretty neat. This is the next generation of things, and I hope that we're all around to enjoy this. There's a book written by Kevin Davies. He's the editor-in-chief of the journal CRISPR, a book about editing humanity, and the Pulitzer Prize, or not Pulitzer Prize, Nobel Prize winning discovery that there is a small bacterial product that you can grow in your garage that can edit genes. It can take the mishaps out of your genetic software, correct mistakes. Any first-year grad student can do it. It's super simple. My daughter can do it. She's 22. And you basically put this stuff in and it will take out the gene that causes sickle cell anemia. It will take out the gene that causes thalassemia. It will take out the gene that causes cystic fibrosis and repair it instantly at a couple $100. It's mind-blowing. In our generation, we will eliminate those diseases completely. We've already got a couple dozen people who've been cured of sickle cell anemia in Boston by doing gene therapies. I don't know how we're gonna pay for it. It's $1 million a dose for the drug company that sponsors this. A single dose is $1 million, but shoot, it's a 14-year-old kid with sickle cell anemia and you can cure them from screaming all day for the rest of their life and save their lives. So we've got to figure that one out too. This to me is the holy grail. If we can find those spelling mishaps, the ones that cause my cancer, and repair them before I get my cancer, or you, this is it. I mean, that's where we're headed, and we want this stuff here in Northern Kentucky. So the labs that you guys got approved through the governor, this is where that goes. 5 years from now, we're going to be doing CRISPR in Northern Kentucky, and we'll be eliminating diseases that we previously just chased, and that's truly going upstream, right? Don't even let the genetic mishap happen that smoking would cause, or UV light would cause, or alcohol would cause, or obesity would cause. That's really upstream. My big hope, because I think many of you look frightened, is that this is good, right? If you can give me 6 hours back a day, I can do better things. I can save more lives. I can hug more patients. I can hold more hands. So our hope is the efficiencies that these tools will give us will let your doctors be human again. I know all of us see physicians in town and they're always typing and they're not looking at us because they have to make a 3-page note to justify your 15-minute visit, or the insurance company won't pay this place and let us build this. We have to do that. That's our job to keep the lights on. We don't like doing that at all. If this replaces that, those doctors who are really the bottleneck, everybody gets access to care. Think about it as a patient. If I have Chatbot 4 and I am the worst medical student who graduated last in my class from the very worst medical school in the country, we'll put it in the Caribbean, that doctor now has the same differential diagnosis as the top doctor at Harvard instantly. You type in the symptoms, the chatbot pops out. These are the 14 things that are most likely statistically speaking. That's great. That means people in underserved rural communities who can't attract MD Anderson doctors will have access to the finest level of care because the robots help us. So I think of it as a really, really neat thing. I want to do it in a responsible fashion. We're not rushing into it. It's not taking over medical care, but I think we're going to find augmented intelligence as a way that we're going to take things in education, in medicine, to let us do things that people can do creatively that no one else can program. The computers aren't going to hug people, right? So this is a book by Eric Topol, who's I think he's the most brilliant man in the world, the finest physician I've ever read. He's just light years ahead of the rest of us. And he talked about this. There's no algorithm for empathy. And we're not going to lose that. These tools might actually let the doctors look at you and touch you and examine you in the room because we're not worried about typing or a note during that thing. So it's quite remarkable, and that's coming very, very quickly. Any questions? I'm right here. You all look a little stunned. I expected that. We're going to give Dr. Sathi 10 minutes to catch up. It's going to be okay. Yeah, I heard it.
Hey, Doug, so where does surgery go with AI? You see that intervening as well?
Sure. I think we're already seeing that, obviously. You guys have seen the Da Vinci robot where the doctor is playing a video game 12 feet away from your bed, and it's dampening shaking hands, and it's making a movement that's 10 millimeters in the doctor's hand, a millimeter on the robot's hand. So we can do things like peel grapes and sew them back together from a robot across the country now. That's going to give access to people who don't have access to surgeons. Eventually, what will happen is the body will be mapped with imaging that's so precise that those robots will be able to decide what to cut and sew and change. And they may start as surgical assistants first. But 4 years ago, 5 years ago, robots seemed crazy. And my surgery, I had half my kidney out. It was a robotic surgery. I was up around 2 days later, tiny little incisions. I still can wear my thong. It's perfect. Yeah. From a diagnostic standpoint, from a treatment standpoint, we talked about drug design. Our radiation therapy planners are very excited about this next generation of AI software. It's incredibly complicated to figure out the decay of electrons over a certain dimension while you want to hit the esophagus but not the spinal cord. And so we use dosimetrists here. We have physicists that do really, really heavy level calculus with computer aids to figure that out. The AI can do it in seconds, and it takes our doctors 3 or 4 days to figure that out. So it's coming, and it's a good thing. I think I would look back generations ago, cell phones came, and we were all stunned that you could bounce something off a satellite instantaneously and find a cat picture, right? This is just like that. We're just gonna be, caught by surprise how quickly it's gonna come because it's logarithmic now. It isn't a computer programmer typing code. Now I can go on Chatbot and I say, design a website for me doing the following 8 things, and it writes the code. Hundreds of pages of code are instantaneous, done. Lawyers, if any of you are in the crowd, everything you've ever written is automatically documented now. You will write as a certified by the Kentucky Bar lawyer specializing in real estate transactions. I need a contract looking at the following. And I probably wrote 15 prompts like this today, and the more detailed the prompt, the better the output. And so I'm founding an AI journal in oncology, and I'm going to be the editor-in-chief. I'm really excited. It's a kind of a side gig because I don't sleep. And the first 4 pages of the journal are called Scope and Aims, and it's a complicated thing, describing what the journal's aims are, what we want to do as a scientific journal, what manuscripts we want to accept. And I spent about 20 minutes on a prompt, and it typed out the 4 pages better than I could have ever dreamed of writing it, using the best available aims. And it's not plagiarism, it's truly creative and unique. You could type, I want a 168-page book about the following. It writes it. I want, for the college students, right? Please compose an essay, 600 words on comparison between F. Scott Fitzgerald and Emily Bronte. Done. And so we're having to figure this out. It's here. There's no doubt about it. So I wanted you guys to hear that from me, so that when you start to hear this outlandish stuff coming out of St. Elizabeth, you won't think that we're nuts. We're just trying to stay ahead of the curve. We're a little nuts, like Apple or, maybe Spotify, but yes, sir.
Would you comment on chemotherapy versus immunotherapy?
Sure. Well, 3 or 4 years ago, I'd say probably half of my patients got chemo and half got targeted therapies or immunotherapies. Now it's almost 100%. And what Bill's referring to is we're now able to harness your immune system. So we can give drugs that will turn on your own immune fighting cells to recognize cancer as foreign. We jack up the volume on your T cells and they will attack your cancer for us. And so we don't have to blow up the whole building. We're actually going after the cancer cells as foreign invaders. And it's been universally successful regardless of the tumor type. The FDA has approved Keytruda, which is a Merck product for anyone who has certain markers that would suggest response independent of where it came from, because it doesn't matter if it's a colon cancer or a lung cancer. If you have that biomarker, that drug might work. To that end, we also have replaced most chemotherapies with targeted drugs. We've got about 20 pills for lung cancer now. And we now will send off your tumor mutational status from a blood draw, and it may give me 20 different markers, and those give me targets that I can use to exploit your cancer's weaknesses or Achilles heels. And so on my Monday clinics, I would say I might see 15 patients and I give chemo to maybe 2, and 13 aren't getting chemo here anymore, which is the whole idea of precision medicine, right? Right drug, right time, right dose, and we're using your genes and your cancer's genes to take advantage and give you better, smarter therapies.
Saving lives.
I sure hope so. Yep, that's the goal.
Yeah,
Tony?
with the precision medicine and the gene, I guess the DNA analysis and that you do, can you do every drug with every person, or is it only specific now between drug X and me?
Good question. So we don't test the drugs. First of all, we test the microsomes of your liver that break down the drugs, and we know most of those. And so you might have 315 different microsomes that are produced by your liver that are responsible for metabolizing that agent. So I'm a CYP3A4 mutant, so I am slow to metabolize certain drugs and fast to metabolize other ones. So if I get started on 5 milligrams of warfarin, there's a very, very high chance that I'm going to bleed from Coumadin. I want 2.5 milligrams. If I start on Zocor with my CYP3A4, there's a very good chance that I'm going to have cramps on Lipitor in my legs. And now we can predict who's going to have that or not. And there's 30 or 40 of those that are incredibly common. And we're checking just about anybody who gets chemo here for colon cancer, pancreas cancer, or a certain set of drugs. We're trying to move that next into cardiovascular stuff, because I think about 25% of our 11,000 Plavix patients are getting a placebo right now. And it just doesn't work for them because they metabolize it out of their body. And for antidepressants, it's the same. I don't know how many of you have tried them. As a doctor, all of my patients are on them. And you go through drug 1 and it doesn't work, and drug 2 causes you to be dizzy and foggy, and drug 3 doesn't work, and you finally find drug 4. We now have red, yellow, green. You do your microsomes of your liver, and it predicts which drug is going to cause toxicities and which drug is going to be safely and appropriately metabolized in the drug we've designed. And that's here. That's not rocket science. That's not future science. That's something we did 20 times a day. We've got 2 people that do nothing but that. They're PharmDs that are pharmacogenomic pharmacists on the first floor in that Center for Precision Medicine that Jerry named. And they are doing that science right now. She's just giving me the finger. Love you. Obviously, we're quite close. Other questions? Yes, ma'am.
So is AI going to help with interactions of other drugs? Like, if you're on this new drug for this and this and this?
Sure, yes, absolutely. When we build some of that in now, so say for instance, I have sent off my genotype, or one of you, many of you actually I know well, have had that sent off. The Epic modules that we've designed will give us an alert already. And so my doctor tried to start a drug on me on Thursday. He was writing a prescription when I was in the room, and it popped up an alert. He's like, whoa, what's that? I'm like, yeah, I had that 2 years ago. I have one of the best primary care doctors in the region. I'm quite certain, because I trained with him. I know how smart he is. And he didn't know how to use this yet. So we're rolling that out piecemeal right now. The next generation will be, that digital assistant will be in the room with us on an iPad. And they're going to hear our visit. They're going to record it. They're going to write the note that I need for that insurance company. They're going to order the MRI for me and remind me there's a drug-drug interaction. Or, do you know that person had a reaction to that when they had that drug from their family doctor in Hebron 7 years ago? And we need that. That's big data, right? We can't possibly learn that. I can't possibly find that information. I just told you it's so complicated, we have to subspecialize in myeloma or head and neck cancer. I can't keep track of what's happening in Grant County in a primary care doctor's office. It's buried thousands and thousands of data points. That's where AI is going to win for us, because it's a pattern recognizer. It's going to take big data and it's going to give us the signal and just take out all the noise. So in a good way.